This married couple is desperately trying to live a normal life, while the husband randomly teleports forward and backward in time several times a day. A woman named Claire and a man named Henry are both giving separate interviews about what their unique marriage is like, because Henry is someone who can travel in time. Henry labels it as a disability because it's not in his control and it makes his life very difficult. At any given moment, he can randomly teleport to the past, and every time he does, his clothes remain in the present, so he's always naked. He explains that he's gotten very good at stealing, fighting, and running because when you show up in random places completely naked, people don't respond very well. Henry explains that sometimes he's only gone for a few minutes before he returns to the present, but other times he's gone for weeks and months, and he has to survive in a completely different time. Claire explains that she's gotten used to Henry disappearing by now. She says that she hears a coffee mug drop or a tap running too long, and she knows it's happened. Then, she starts waiting for Henry to return and worries for his safety. The interviewer asks the two when they first met, and both of them smile and reply that it's complicated. Flashback to when Claire is 20 years old and Henry is 28. Claire arrives at a library to pick up a book, and Henry works there. The two meet, and Claire recognizes Henry, but Henry doesn't recognize her. She tells him that he has a birthmark on his left foot and a scar on his forehead. She says that she has known him for over 14 years, and it's crazy to stand here and watch him looking at her like a stranger. She adds that this is the youngest she's ever seen him. Henry realizes that some older version of him came back in time and met Claire, and that's how she knows him. The two agree to meet for dinner. Henry comes home and cleans his place in case he gets lucky after dinner. He stashes all the things left behind by another woman in a drawer. Then, Henry sees a puddle of blood on the bathroom floor, but before he can clean it, it's gone. Next, Henry shows up to dinner, and Claire shows him a list of all the dates when she's met Henry's future self in the past. He is as confused as that last sentence. Henry asks what's the oldest that Claire has seen him, and she says that the oldest version of him that she met was 40. Henry goes quiet, and Claire implores him to ask any questions he wants. Henry asks why his future self would visit her so many times, and Claire replies that she is his future wife. Henry is shocked and anxious upon hearing this, but Claire empathizes because she's known this since she was young, but he is only just finding out. Henry asks Claire how she first met him, and Claire launches into the story. Flashback to when Claire is 6 years old and is playing in the wilderness. She hears a man throwing up in the woods. It's a much older Henry traveling back from the future. Henry asks Claire to bring him some clothes, and she steals some of her father's. Henry tells Claire that he is a time traveler, and she starts asking him lots of questions. She asks him if he has a wife in the future, and he replies that he does. She asks what her name is, and he replies that her name is also Claire. Claire asks him if he has ever seen dinosaurs, and he replies that he mostly only travels within the time span of his own life. Henry tells Claire that he needs her to keep some clothes hidden under a rock for him because he is going to come back here a bunch of times. Claire asks why he can't bring his own clothes, and he replies that those are the rules. She asks who taught him the rules, and he tentatively replies that another time traveler did. He launches into the story. Flashback to when Henry is 7 years old and visiting a museum with his mom and dad. He goes home, travels back in time a few hours, and arrives at the museum again. 28-year-old Henry is present at the museum, and he gives 7-year-old Henry some clothes. He tells 7-year-old Henry that he is going to be training him for time travel now. He explains to 7-year-old Henry that he will always feel sick before and after he travels in time. He will always be hungry when he travels, and will always be naked. He won't always return to his present right away. Sometimes he will travel to another time first. He can also travel to the future, but that rarely happens. 7-year-old Henry asks if there are lots of time travelers, and 28-year-old Henry tentatively replies yes. Both Henrys return to their respective presents. 28-year-old Henry returns to a few hours before his date with 20-year-old Claire and beats up a man to steal his suit and flowers. Next, Henry and Claire come to his apartment after dinner, and Henry finds a baby tooth lying on the ground. As the two proceed to make out, Claire notices the tooth, and Henry explains that every part of him time travels, from his toenail clippings to his blood and teeth. This tooth will soon return under the pillow of a young Henry. If he ever sees blood randomly in his vicinity, and it disappears, it means that somewhere in some future or past he's gotten terribly hurt. Claire makes out with Henry vigorously because she's never met him this young before, and the older Henry never let her touch him. Afterward, she finds the stuff left behind by the other woman at Henry's apartment and gets upset. Henry explains that he has a girlfriend, and Claire is enraged. Henry justifies it, saying that she's known she will be his wife for a while, but he's never even met her. Claire gets angry over the fact that he could have at least mentioned his girlfriend before they made out, and Henry smugly replies that if he did that, he wouldn't have got to make out with her. Fair point. Claire gets angry and leaves. Meanwhile, a 36-year-old Henry disappears in front of 6-year-old Claire and arrives outside the apartment where the two are fighting. He follows the angry 20-year-old Claire to a bar. Claire tells him that his 28-year-old self is a douche, and this is not the man that she's known and waited for all these years. 36-year-old Henry replies that he is, but he's just a scared little boy who's living a terrified life. Claire asks, how did this douche turn into the gentleman sitting in front of her? And 36-year-old Henry replies that just like young Claire formed herself around him, this Henry will form himself around her. He convinces Claire to give 28-year-old Henry a chance. The two Henrys meet outside. Old Henry tells young Henry to get his act together, and young Henry is sarcastic and dismissive. 36-year-old Henry returns to his present and sleeps with a 28-year-old Claire. Meanwhile, 28-year-old Henry hears someone time travel in a nearby alleyway and is shocked to find just his feet lying there with his birthmark on the left foot. He is terrified. Next, Claire speaks to the interviewer, and she explains that there are some moments in Henry's life that he keeps repeatedly traveling back to. Henry explains that the more significant a time is in his life, the more likely he is to visit it again and again. Claire says that there is one particular time in his life that whenever he visits it, she can always tell by the look on his face. Flashback to when Henry is 8 years old and getting in a car with his mother on Christmas. As he and his mother travel, 8-year-old Henry notices that there are many versions of him present all around, meaning this is a moment that Henry travels back to often. A car crashes into Henry's mother's car and causes a steel sheet from the car in front to go through their windshield and decapitate his mother. 8-year-old Henry survives by time traveling to a few minutes before the incident, and he sees it happen again from the outside. All the other versions of Henry watch on. Next, 31-year-old Henry plays checkers with a 6-year-old Claire, and she asks him questions as usual. She asks him what his parents do, and he replies that his dad is a violinist and his mother was a singer. Claire asks why he uses was for his mother, and he just says he misspoke. Claire says he suddenly looks sad, and asks why that is so. Henry says that being sad is not a bad thing, because when you find out why people are sad, then you find out who they really are. Claire continues to inquire why he is sad, and Henry says that he will tell her one day when a green man serves her a banana latte in front of Lake Como. Claire thinks he is just making things up. 20-year-old Claire and 28-year-old Henry are going on their second date, and Claire is still very much mad at him. She asks him why he just accepts the future and doesn't try to change it, and he replies that he's tried, but it doesn't work. Claire angrily says that she is not going to accept that because she makes her own future. She gets off at a random train station to prove her point, but Henry replies that this is the station they were supposed to get off at in the first place. He says that this is how it works. The future is fixed. It's not forced on them, but it is fixed by the decisions that they make. They'll make the decisions they are meant to make. To prove her point again, Claire decides to go to a different cafe from the one that Henry was going to take her to. As the two sit in the cafe, a man with green face paint on serves Claire a banana latte. She looks to her left and sees a drawing of Lake Como. She realizes she didn't change the future by choosing this cafe. She asks Henry to tell her what makes him sad. Henry goes blank. Claire asks why the older Henry said that his mother was a singer. Why did she stop singing? Henry tells Claire that his mother was Annette Lynn Robinson, and Claire recognizes the name because Annette Lynn Robinson was a famous opera singer. Claire's face suddenly becomes grave because Annette's death is a famously known event. She says that Henry must miss her terribly, but Henry reminds her that he is a time traveler, so he actually gets to see his mother all the time. He reveals that he sometimes even travels to times before his birth, so he's seen his parents' proposal. Claire asks if Henry's parents knew about his time traveling, and Henry replies that his mother never got to find out, but his dad discovered it in a terrible way. Flashback to when Henry is 16 years old and being pleasured by someone under the sheets. His dad walks into the room and discovers that Henry is being pleasured by another Henry. Gay. Claire is shocked at this story, and Henry tries to justify it by saying he was only 16. Not a great justification, bro. Henry tells Claire that he got to know his parents quite well by time traveling to before his birth and spending time with them. Claire asks Henry if he ever speaks to other versions of himself, and he says yes. Claire finds it weird, but Henry says that he is used to having himself around. He reveals to her that the other time traveler he told her about when she was a kid was actually him. He trained his 8-year-old self in all the techniques that he now knows to survive time traveling. Flashback to a 28-year-old Henry training an 8-year-old Henry to steal and fend for himself. 8-year-old Henry tries to talk to the older Henry like a friend, but older Henry says that they are not friends. He is just training him. 8-year-old Henry tells older Henry that his mom is dead, but older Henry replies that that is not true. He shows 8-year-old Henry the date, and it's before his mom's death. Older Henry explains that when you're a time traveler, no one is ever permanently dead. They're just not dead yet. Life and death are on auto shuffle. 8-year-old Henry gets excited thinking he can save his mom, but older Henry says that that won't happen. He cannot change the future. 8-year-old Henry stubbornly says that he can, but older Henry says that he can prove it. He tells 8-year-old Henry that in 30 seconds he's going to run out of his chair. No one will force him. It will be his own decision, but it will happen. Determined to prove older Henry wrong, 8-year-old Henry grabs his chair tightly. 30 seconds later, he turns around and sees his mother standing in the distance, alive and well. He cannot help it and runs toward her, proving older Henry right. 8-year-old Henry tries to tell his mother that her life is in danger, but she does not believe him. Next, 28-year-old Henry reveals to 8-year-old Henry that he is not another time traveler. He is 8-year-old Henry's future self. In the present, Claire has listened to this whole story intently, understanding that there is more to this douchebag version of Henry than meets the eye. Henry takes her to the library where he works and shows her pictures of his childhood. Henry explains that he's not a douche. He's just scared to care about people because if he cares for someone, he's scared he'll have to watch them die over and over again, as he does with his mom. He plays a recording of one of his mother's concerts for Claire. He tells Claire that after the concerts, his mother often talked to the crowd and asks her if she has a question for his mother. Claire is confused, but asks a question anyway. Henry plays the tape, and his mother answers the question at the concert. Claire is shocked, but Henry explains that he just decided that if he ever traveled back in time far enough, he would meet his mother and request her to answer this question at the end of this particular show. Hence, a future version of him did it, and the answer to the question Claire just thought of asking has been stored on this tape since before she was born. Claire is stunned. Henry gets emotional because he's essentially just introduced Claire to his mother. Claire is emotional too. The two bond over this. The Time Traveler's Wife is a 2022 series that explores themes of determinism, free will, and identity within a romantic setting. Despite being a hit with fans who petitioned for the show to be renewed for Season 2, the series was canceled due to poor reviews from critics. Thank you for watching. Be sure to like our channel and subscribe if you enjoy content like this. Also, let us know what movie you would love us to recap for you.